The convoy entered the pass too slow, too confident. Gunfire opened from the ridgeline. An IED took the lead truck. The gunships ahead climbed and scattered. Radios cracked with panic. At the rear, the third Apache didn't move. Someone said, "She's frozen again." But inside the cockpit, she had already marked the slope, counted the muzzles, and trimmed her angle. She dropped below the ridge, took the fire on purpose, and gave the convoy space to run. No broadcast, no call for credit, just a scorched bird holding the line. Warrant Officer Maya Delgado arrived on the flight line before first light, moving with the kind of deliberate calm that made her nearly invisible. The hangar hadn't fully woken yet, just the soft hum of generators and the occasional rattle of a loose panel in the wind. Her boots hit the concrete with no rhythm, just purpose. Like each step carried weight she refused to share. One by one, she walked the length of the parked Apache, hand grazing its side panel. It wasn't ceremony. It was memory. The coffee cup she always set on the rotor blade just for a moment was there, lid secured, steam barely visible in the chill. She never drank it until checks were done. Her pre-flight was methodical, not rushed, not delayed, just precise. Engine compartment, hydraulic lines, rotor lock. Every check flowed like it lived in her hands. In a culture obsessed with flair, she moved like a mechanic, quiet, invisible, correct. Voices drifted from the ready room, male laughter mostly. A few words cut through the static of the hangar speakers. Freeze frame. It was always those two words. They didn't yell it anymore. They didn't have to. The phrase lingered in the air now, soft but sharp. A clipped video from a live fire training event, only 7 seconds long, had been edited to make her hesitation look like failure. She had paused just long enough at a simulated threat corner that someone cropped the clip and added subtitles. "Think fast," followed by a flash cut of the next pilot opening fire. The clip spread faster than any memo. Nobody shared the full version. Maya didn't watch the clip. Not once. She didn't need to. She remembered the moment in full, not the edited version. What the clip didn't show was the terrain marker not matching the intel, the possible civilian silhouette 30 meters deep behind the barrier. She had waited 2 seconds to confirm. The other pilot fired. He got the kill credit. She got the label. That morning, the mission board listed her in faint, dry erase ink, half rubbed off, convoy trail overwatch, standard rear escort for a low-priority supply movement, safe, distant, and forgettable. It wasn't an assignment. It was exile with a headset. She tapped the name under hers, Sean, and nodded slightly. He would be lead bird. The same Sean who had laughed when someone called her the patron saint of indecision. Inside the briefing room, folding chairs sat in rows. Most were filled with pilots in various stages of alertness. Tablets glowed. Cans hissed open. Someone near the middle scrolled through old flight footage, laughing too loud. Sean leaned back with his sleeves rolled to his elbows and said loud enough to cut the room, "Let's make sure this time we fly with someone who can commit, not contemplate." A few heads turned toward her. Maya took the last seat in the back. The walls were gray. The projector clicked. The names rolled. Sean, Cameron, Vance, Wyatt. But when the list reached the third bird, it just said, "Rear Overwatch." No call sign. Ghost 3 had been unofficially retired. The pilot, however, was still in the room. After brief, most of the pilots dispersed in pairs, talking routes and weather loads. Maya walked alone back toward the hangar, past racks of jump bags and crates of flares. Her hands stayed at her sides. The dull marker by the call sign wall hadn't been used in weeks. Her name was still smudged from the corner. Nobody noticed. Her quarters were small, standard bunk, brown tile floor, dull white walls. She unzipped her flight vest and hung it with practiced efficiency. On the desk her journal, spiral-bound and worn. She flipped it open to the map. Not the official convoy map, the one she had drawn by hand over the past 3 nights. Ridge overlays, thermal signatures, exit funnels. She had cross-referenced it with 5 previous escort recordings. Every ambush that had hit that region followed a pattern. She had circled 3 primary threat zones in red ink and labeled them with numbers, not names. She spent an hour reviewing patterns. After that, she marked terrain altitudes along each edge. Her calculations for angle of elevation and overhead escape velocity were sketched in faded pencil. At the top of the page, just above the marker for Sector 6, she had written 3 words. Time to commit. The base loudspeaker crackled again as the last patrols returned. She heard Sean's voice somewhere outside, laughing with someone about velocity and flare. Maya sat still, one hand on her logbook, the other tracing a faint line across the ridge printout. Her finger stopped at a narrow gorge 3 kilometers north of the main route. She tapped it once, softly, then shut the notebook. By the time she lay down, the only sound in her room was the low mechanical whine of the ceiling fan. Her boots rested parallel by the door, her gloves folded clean on the desk. On the shelf above her bunk sat a folded piece of masking tape. It used to say Ghost 3. The ink had faded, and one corner had curled. She didn't peel it down. Not yet. She would wait until there was something else to write in its place. The sky had gone a dull gray by the time the convoy rolled past the outer checkpoint. Cloud cover hung low over the ridgeline, thick enough to smear the sun but not dark enough to delay operations. Maya's Apache lifted last, settling into the rear trail position. From the air, the line of supply vehicles looked like a segmented spine crawling across the valley floor. 32 trucks, 2 escort birds, and 1 silent tail gunner whose name had already been forgotten. Up front, Sean's voice came over the intercom with a snap of static. He sounded as relaxed as ever. Convoy is moving like molasses. Rear overwatch. Try not to fall asleep back there. Another voice followed with a dry laugh. She's probably already logged it as a hazard zone maximum boredom. Maya didn't reply. She kept the Apache steady, cruising at 100.0 knots, just above the scrub line. Her HUD glowed with minimal overlays, altitude band, fuel rate, terrain gradient. Most pilots flew with noise. She flew with margins. The terrain shifted gradually as they left the basin. Hills rose to the west, peppered with trees still bare from the seasonal shift. The road curved tighter, and Maya adjusted altitude without a word. Her left hand toggled through the infrared band. A ghosted shape flickered at the edge of her vision, just a shimmer of heat out of place. She watched it again, then ran the sequence backward. 1 frame. 2. There. A horizontal register too warm for rock, too linear for foliage, possibly metallic, possibly recent. She thumbed the radio. Rear overwatch, she said calmly. Reading ridge signature, left slope, coordinates logged, could be metal. Sean's voice cut in without pause. Ghost 3. You're reading ghosts. That range is full of hot rock pockets. Don't get spooked by shadows. Someone else chuckled on the open channel, probably her coffee cup reflecting back. Maya didn't respond. She marked the spot on her HUD, then jotted it in her notebook. Sector 6, west slope. Intermittent heat bloom. She had circled it before. Now it had a second tick beside it. The road narrowed as the convoy climbed higher. Blind corners increased. From her perch in the rear, Maya could see the shape of the route curling against the incline like a question mark drawn in sand. The pass ahead was familiar. She had traced it by hand in her quarters the night before. The outer rock face created a natural V funnel. If you were going to stop a convoy, this was the place. Sean made a sweeping flyby just above the lead vehicle, pulling a lazy arc to show off. The driver honked twice, just for fun. The lead escort bird fell back slightly to adjust spacing. Maya stayed low. She adjusted elevation again, nudging below the ridge lip. Her HUD flared briefly, another hot ping. This one closer. She switched filters. It vanished. Switched back. Still gone. False read. Possibly, but she wrote it down anyway. The air grew heavier as they entered the narrowest stretch of the route. The convoy slowed to 15 miles per hour, wheels grinding gravel and soft shale. One of the MR apps kicked a stone down the embankment. Maya watched it tumble, bouncing once, then vanishing into the fog below. The radio buzzed again. Lead to rear. Status check. She answered clearly. Rear is green. Elevation holding. No new contacts. Copy that, Sean replied. Try not to drift too far back. Would hate to have to rescue you from boredom. Another laugh on the line. This time from someone in the lead Humvee. We're thinking of naming this stretch after her. Indecision Pass. Maya didn't reach for the mic again. Instead, she adjusted the gain on her visual overlay and toggled to the fallback terrain scan. The pass they were in had 4 viable exits. 1 was behind them. 2 were too narrow for vehicles. The 4th led straight to a flat ridgeline with clear sight on the convoy path. She tapped the top of her knee-pad journal and glanced down. The overlay sketch she'd drawn the night before matched perfectly. She had labeled that ridge as a potential Overwatch ambush zone, wind direction, line of sight, firing arc all aligned. None of the others had seen it. Or maybe they had, and just didn't care. The rear of the convoy crested the midpoint of the pass. Maya slowed further, letting the last 2 trucks roll ahead. Her Apache was now the lowest bird in the stack, barely above treetop level, hugging the incline like a shadow. She watched. No chatter. No motion. Just slow, crawling progress in the wind dragging across the rotors like breath. Another flicker. Farther left now. Lower. She exhaled. Tapped it. Marked it. The HUD vibrated faintly as the temperature spike corrected itself and blinked off the grid. Maya stayed focused. Her hand hovered over the targeting master but did not press. None of them would see it. Not yet. The explosion hit without warning. 1 second the convoy was creeping through the pass, and the next, the lead truck vanished behind a curtain of fire and dust. The sound came with a violent shudder, shaking the valley walls and echoing off the ridge with brutal clarity. Gunfire followed immediately. Sharp bursts from above, cut with the hiss of automatic fire slicing across the narrow road. Debris rained against armored panels. 2 trucks swerved and stalled. Smoke bloomed thick across the route. Inside the cockpit of her Apache, Maya saw it all. Her HUD flared with alert's infrared spike, acoustic trigger, directional fire from both sides of the pass. The readouts confirmed what she had already known was coming. She tightened her grip on the cyclic and held her altitude. Up front, Sean's voice cracked over the comms. We're hit. Pulling vertical, repositioning high. His Apache surged upward, blades chopping through the rising smoke. The second gunship banked hard to the right, swinging wide and vanishing behind a line of wind-swept trees. The space above the convoy opened into a funnel of confusion, with no one left to cover the ground. Rear Overwatch, copy a voice shouted through static. Then another, Where the hell is Ghost 3? Maya didn't answer. She stayed low, level, steady. The ridge to her left lit with muzzle flashes. A convoy gunner fired back from his turret, spraying upward at impossible angles. More shouts filled the channel. She's not moving. Frozen again. She's locking up just like the drill. Sean's voice returned, sharper this time. We need a 3rd bird up here now. Maya, if you can't commit, clear the net. The cockpit felt smaller with each word. Still, Maya didn't reply. She reached for her mic, then stopped. She flicked it off, silencing the noise. 5 seconds of peace. Her eyes tracked movement along the upper slope. 3 firing positions, staggered spacing, 2 rotating fire, 1 on reload. She toggled to thermal overlay and confirmed. Flashpoints matched the markers she had circled last night in her journal. The ambush wasn't improvised. It was laid with intent. Her finger hovered over the flight marker on her nav ring. Her route was already pre-selected. She just hadn't launched it. Outside, chaos escalated. One of the trucks reversed too sharply and clipped its rear axle on a boulder. The column stalled again. Radio calls for fire support overlapped. Sean's voice barked instructions no one followed. A younger voice shouted, "We're sitting ducks." Someone else muttered into the open net, "She's useless." Another added, "Knew she'd freeze when it counted." Maya's thumb toggled a secondary view. Not forward-facing. Overhead. Topographic. She watched the movement like chess, the slope above behaving exactly as it had in her projections. 1 minute in. First reposition. 2 minutes. Flanking rotation. If she moved too soon, they'd adjust. If she moved too late, the convoy would break. She breathed once, long and deep. The flight harness shifted against her vest as she realigned slightly in the seat. Her HUD blinked again. Range profile confirmed. She made a 2-degree adjustment to her heading. Just a notch. Enough. She armed flares, not to strike, to bait. The release was clean. 3 magnesium ribbons ignited and dropped in arcs, casting harsh light into the fog. The gunfire shifted briefly. One of the ridge gunners reacted, turning to follow the light. Maya watched the angle. A second shooter hesitated. That was the gap. She slid left. Lower. Down into the bowl where the canyon cut against the slope. Her Apache rode the air like a blade through cloth. The angle was steep. The tree line blurred upward. She leveled beneath it. Then she climbed 10 feet and held. From this position, they couldn't target her directly, not without repositioning. She held the nose straight, didn't speak, didn't twitch, just flew. Below. The convoy began to move again. A second truck regained traction and pulled forward. Maya stayed exactly where she was, rotor wash kicking gravel from the slope. She let herself become the signal bait without a shot fired, a moving target just visible enough to draw fire. 3 bullets glanced off her tail boom. Her right display flashed a stabilizer warning. She muted it with a single tap. Sean's voice returned, distant and confused. "Ghost 3, what are you?" But she never responded. Her Apache was steady. Her finger traced the ridge angle on her nav ring once more. She was not frozen. She was drawing the line. Maya dropped altitude hard. The Apache banked under the tree line, its rotors whipping branches into violent motion. Twigs and leaves slashed through the wash like debris caught in a turbine. But she didn't flinch. Her path was exact. Every second of movement had been rehearsed in her mind. The ridge pattern, the airflow contour, the drop radius, she knew them all by memory. The bird responded to touch alone. Gunfire tracked behind her, erratic, but committed. She could feel the kinetic pressure in the air, rounds chasing her vector. Another flash from the slope signaled a fresh burst. This one clipped her starboard fin. Her left display blinked yellow, then stabilized. Damage, not failure. The comms channel buzzed with fractured voices. Multiple pilots tried to reach her, to call out coordinates, to question her course. Maya reached up and toggled her mic off. Silence returned, pure and deliberate. She didn't need more voices. She needed the map inside her head. She skimmed above a dry wash, dropped another 10 feet, and cut left along a fault line running parallel to the convoy's last visible position. The space narrowed. Her blades missed a boulder by less than a meter. Dust flared against the cockpit glass. She stayed level. Her HUD alignment reticle pulsed orange. The onboard system couldn't understand what she was doing. It flagged the maneuver as unstable. Maya ignored it. Ahead, the box canyon loomed narrow, jagged, and irreversible once entered. She could hear her own breath now, steady and paced. The vibration in the controls changed as she reduced throttle, bleeding just enough lift to dip into the bowl without dragging tail. The walls closed in on both sides. From above, Sean watched, stunned. His Apache hovered 300 feet above the ridge, safe but inert. He hadn't followed her call-outs. He hadn't memorized the terrain. The way she moved didn't make sense to him. No one flew into a dead-end canyon. No one chose that route on purpose. But Maya hadn't chosen it in the moment. She had chosen it days ago. She dropped fully into the canyon's basin. The walls rose steeply, offering no exit other than forward. Her altitude monitor blinked low clearance, then blinked again. She adjusted cyclic pressure gently, guiding the Apache into the tightest corridor she had ever flown. Below her, loose gravel scattered in the rotor wash. The stone floor angled upward 15 degrees of climb, lined with shale and jutting stumps. Her nav computer threw a terrain warning. She disabled it. The gunners on the ridge adjusted fire. Muzzle flashes flickered overhead. She saw the arc of a tracer round slip wide to her right. Another hit the rock just above her canopy. The Apache rattled, but she stayed on course. The route was a mirrored path she had traced in her notebook the night before. Every curve, every pitch change. She shifted slightly left to avoid a shallow depression, then right again to line up with the narrowest pass, barely 20 meters wide. The blades could not roll. She had to stay flat. Her stabilizers scraped air molecules off stone. Her tail caught a gust of crosswind. She compensated with 2 sharp inputs. The Apache leaned, resisted, then corrected. The margin of error was less than half a second. She made it through. Wind echoed oddly in the narrow channel, bouncing off stone and distorting sound. The rotors changed pitch as she rose with the slope. The climb was not vertical, but steep enough to strain lift. She leaned forward and trusted the lift vector. The HUD flared red, then realigned. Her reticle turned green. Behind her, gunfire slackened. The ambushers had moved their positions. They were still firing, but not at the convoy. She had drawn the line of fire fully into the canyon. They had committed to stopping her, and she had made herself too costly to ignore. From the canyon lip, she pulled hard into a lateral drift. Her fuselage scraped air across a tree stump jutting out from the ridge. One panel caught a scratch, but the structure held. The Apache surged forward into open air. Above, the second gunship reappeared, hovering near the old kill zone. Its pilot spoke, but the comms were still silent in Maya's helmet. She wasn't listening. She rose gently now, leveling with the slope. The final stretch was cleaner, but still tight. A single wrong calculation would pin her against the rock. She made none. The wind evened out. Her elevation stabilized. She toggled thermal view again, no hot contacts. The ridge gunners had repositioned too late. They couldn't descend fast enough to relocate, and they couldn't stop the trucks now. Ahead, the road reappeared beyond the mist. The convoy was moving, slowly, erratically, but still moving. A full chain of vehicles, dirt and dust trailing behind them. They were heading west. Maya eased off throttle and allowed herself 1 second of stillness. She tapped her mic back on. The static popped in. Voices overlapped again. "Who's flying that low? Did you see her cut through that slot?" Sean's voice was the last to rise through the channel. He sounded different now. "Ghost 3. What the hell did you just fly?" Maya didn't respond. She angled away from the ridgeline, back toward the road. Her fuel gauge edged lower, one warning now blinking in soft amber. She didn't glance at it. She stayed low, positioning herself between the tail of the convoy and the line of retreat. Her Apache hovered with steady blades. The silence returned. She had reshaped the map in real time. She had redrawn the battle line with rotor wash and memory alone. The first voice to cut through the comms came from the lead truck. It was ragged, half choked with smoke or maybe laughter. "Convoy's clear," the driver said. "She bought us the whole damn road." No one answered at first, not even Sean. The channel, so loud minutes earlier, went still. Maya's Apache crested a rise near the end of the ridgeline, its silhouette emerging from low cloud and dust. The stabilizer on her right side was tilted off-center. One of the heat vents pulsed unevenly. The hull bore a fresh impact scar that hadn't been there at launch. Her rotors were intact, but the sound they made wasn't clean. It was real. She didn't request escort. She didn't call her position. She flew above the final 2 trucks like she had been there the whole time. The comms stayed quiet. In the background, a young gunner in the convoy's 5th vehicle whispered something, not realizing his mic was still open. "She never froze," he said. "She held it." Sean heard it. Everyone did. Back at the forward base, technicians watched the telemetry logs light up in green and amber pulses. One of them stepped away from the console. confused. Ghost 3 is still airborne. Another shook his head. That bird shouldn't be flying. Not with those stabilizer flags. But it was, and she was. Maya's fuel was critically low. The gauge blinked, soft amber, beneath her line of sight. She adjusted nothing. The road below was finally straightening. The last truck cleared the defile. The ambush site was behind them now. No more threats in range. She banked left, gently, and began the slow return arc toward base. The Apache groaned softly with the shift, but held firm. Each degree of motion was managed, restrained, exact. Sean hovered at mid-altitude, his canopy already open. He didn't call her name. He didn't offer feedback. He just watched her rise from the ground haze, rotor blades steady, hull streaked with soot and heat shimmer. His expression, unseen through the canopy glass, was still. For once. He said nothing. The flight back was uneventful, though the silence stretched longer than the miles. Maya flew behind the formation, not because she had to, but because she always did. None of the other pilots addressed her. No one dared. She touched down last. The landing was slow, cautious, and precise. Her gear kissed the tarmac without bounce. As the rotors spooled down, her hand drifted to the flight logbook resting in her lap. It was still open to the map, the same elevation sketch. The final red mark she had drawn was at the ambush site. It remained uncorrected. Sean's Apache was already grounded, canopy open, ladder lowered. He stood beside it now, helmet off, arms crossed but not tight. A few crew chiefs and junior officers gathered near the edge of the line, unsure whether to approach. Their radios were still clipped on, still listening, though no one spoke. Maya powered down the last systems and unlatched her harness. Her hands moved with the same methodical rhythm as always. The difference now was who was watching. She stepped out of the cockpit and climbed down slowly. Her boots met the tarmac like they always had. Her headset dangled from her hand. The cord frayed. One earpiece cracked where it had hit the interior panel during the turn. The Apache behind her vented a final plume of heat. One of the ground crew caught the shimmer across the nose and squinted. The name stenciled there had been faded long before today. Ghost 3 was barely visible, just the echo of white lettering against a scorched gray panel. Sean didn't approach her. He didn't need to. The moment had passed for explanation. Instead, he simply watched as she stepped past the line crew, past the tent flap where debrief would usually happen, and toward the gear bench at the far edge of the hangar. Her walk was even, not proud, not slow, just measured. She didn't look over her shoulder. She didn't wait to be called. The base had seen her flight path. The logs would confirm the maneuver, but nothing written would match the sight of her bird rising from that canyon alone. She reached the bench and set the headset down. The cracked earpiece turned slightly, facing up. For a brief moment, her fingers hovered over the frayed cable, like she might rewind time with a touch. Then she let it be. No one clapped, no one saluted, but they watched her the entire way. She had returned as the same person. Only now they saw her differently. The sun was beginning to drop, casting long shadows across the flight line as Maya walked back across the tarmac. Her helmet was tucked under one arm, boots streaked with dust, sleeves rolled past her elbows. The hum of ground crews echoed in the distance, muffled, almost polite. No one called her name. No one needed to. Sean stood near the hangar entrance. He looked like he had been waiting, though he didn't approach right away. When he did, his steps were measured, his expression uncertain. He opened his mouth once, stopped, then tried again. You flew better than anyone today. Maya didn't break stride. Her eyes didn't narrow, didn't soften. She simply said, "Convoy made it," and kept walking. Sean let her pass. Near the edge of the apron, a young crew chief from the convoy stood holding something in his hand. He looked barely out of training, uniform too new, sleeves still stiff. He stepped forward, voice low and unsure. "They're repainting call signs tomorrow. Figured you should go first." He held out a marker. Maya paused for just a moment, then took it without a word. Her Apache was still cooling, its surface streaked with heat bloom and grime. The old stenciled name Ghost 3 was faded nearly to dust. She knelt slowly, balancing on one knee, and uncapped the marker. With deliberate care, she wrote a single word across the nose panel in clean, even lettering. "Line." She stood up, handed the marker back, and moved toward the gear shed without looking back. Inside, the light was dimmer. Her helmet rested on the shelf beside a strip of masking tape faded and curling at the edges. It still read Ghost 3 in smudged black ink. She peeled it off and dropped it into the bin beside the bench. The tape didn't make a sound, but the room felt quieter once it was gone. She changed into a clean shirt, splashed water on her face, and stared at her reflection for a long moment. Not proud, not shaken, just still. She laced her boots tighter before leaving, checked her hands for cuts, then reached for her helmet. The visor was dusty, smudged from ash and the sweat of long hours. She didn't clean it. She just carried it. Down the hall, the ready room was quiet. The big screen usually filled with weather feeds now showed telemetry footage. Maya's Apache moved across the display in ghostly green lines. Every banking shift recorded, every canyon vector archived in silence. A few people sat watching. No one spoke. No one laughed. She paused just outside the door, listening. From the corner of the room, a young voice spoke someone junior, maybe a mechanic, maybe a new pilot. The words weren't meant for her. They weren't meant for anyone. She didn't freeze, the voice said. She held the line. Maya didn't step inside. She didn't need to. She turned and walked back toward the flight line. The air was cooler now, the wind sliding low over the concrete like breath held between words. Her Apache waited, still marked by ash, still standing. This time, the name was hers, and no one would forget it. She never raised her voice, never demanded to be seen. But when the moment came, Maya flew into the fire without hesitation, not to prove anyone wrong, but because she had already prepared for what they all missed. They called it hesitation. She knew it was control. In silence, she drew the fire, held the line, and gave others room to survive. And in doing so, she rewrote her name where it mattered most. This is a story for anyone who's been overlooked, underestimated, or told they were too quiet to lead. Sometimes the strongest presence is the one that does not speak until it acts. And when it does, everything changes. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect, share your thoughts in the comments, and follow for more stories about quiet strength, earned respect, and the courage that flies beneath the radar until it doesn't.